Homeless girl asks a millionaire, "Can I eat your leftovers?" What she did next left everyone in tears. The wind sliced like blades that cold night in the capital. The sky, cloaked in heavy clouds, promised rain that never came. Outside the Villa Real restaurant, the air felt frozen, but inside, the atmosphere was entirely different. The artificial warmth didn't just heat bodies, it fed the egos of the distinguished diners, wrapped in elegant conversation and restrained laughter. In the center of the dining room, bathed in light from a crystal chandelier that might have belonged in a palace, Catherine Bennett sat alone at a table set for two. She wore a tailored black blazer, understated diamond earrings, and an expression of boredom no glass of wine could soften. Her face was familiar from the covers of business magazines. CEO of the Bennett Group, billionaire, ruthless, always winning. But tonight, something inside her seemed broken. Though no one dared say it out loud, she was reading the latest merger reports on her phone when something made her look up. A strange movement. Out of place. A little girl. Small, too thin for her age, hair tangled, cheeks caked with dust and dried tears. She timidly crossed the restaurant, weaving around the waiters as if she knew she didn't belong. She approached one table and murmured something. No response. Tried another. Heard a cold, almost violent "go away." Catherine watched, unmoving. The child looked unreal there, like a glitch in the perfect scene. When the girl reached the third table, a waiter stepped in. "Miss, this isn't a place for—" he began, but was cut off by a firm voice. "Bring her a chair and a hot meal. From the kitchen, no leftovers," Catherine said, without taking her eyes off the girl. The waiter froze, as did the rest of the room. Whispers rose instantly. Who was that child? What was Catherine doing? She, notorious for her coldness, was inviting a street kid to her table. Sophia hesitated. Her eyes, too big in such a thin face, searched for a trap, but there was only silence. Catherine extended her hand, a contained yet decisive gesture. The girl walked slowly to the chair the still bewildered waiter had brought. She sat with her gaze down, hands trembling in her lap. The restaurant's aromas made her mouth water. Catherine watched every detail, a strange tension in her chest. A plate of risotto and grilled chicken was set before Sophia. She looked at it as if witnessing a miracle. "You can eat," Catherine said, her voice softer than it ever was in meetings. Sophia took the first bite carefully, as if expecting someone to stop her at any moment. But no one did. She ate quickly, as though she didn't know when she'd eat again. Catherine put aside her phone and simply watched. "What's your name?" she asked after a few minutes. The girl paused mid-chew, swallowed, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "Sophia, how old are you?" 10, I think." Catherine inhaled slowly. She had no idea what she was doing or why. But something about this child had breached an inner wall. It wasn't pity. It was something deeper, more personal. As though she saw in her a reflection of a part she'd tried to forget. "You here by yourself?" Sophia nodded. The waiter returned with the check. Catherine paid generously and stood up. She circled the table and held out her hand to the girl, who'd already finished the plate. "Come with me. It's too cold out there." "Where to?" "My place. You're not sleeping on the street tonight." Sophia hesitated. Her tear-filled eyes met a woman so different from anyone she'd ever met. Trust was a luxury for someone living on the streets. But there was something in Catherine's gaze. It wasn't charity. It was a promise. She took the businesswoman's hand, small, fragile, trembling. Those two hands didn't belong together. Yet in that instant, they were joined by something greater than chance. And under the astonished stares of dozens of onlookers, Catherine Bennett walked out of the restaurant hand in hand with a dirty, hungry little girl. The chill outside remained the same, but inside both of them, something had begun to change. The car glided through the city's lit avenues like a silent shadow. Sophia, curled up in the back seat, watched everything with wide eyes. The towering buildings, the blinking lights, the hurried pedestrians oblivious to her existence. With every turn, her body trembled slightly. Catherine, at the wheel, said nothing, but from time to time she glanced in the rearview mirror. There was something in that silence that wasn't discomfort. It was care. They arrived at a mansion with high walls and an electronic gate. The car rolled down a driveway, flanked by perfectly trimmed hedges, stopping in front of the illuminated entrance. Sophia hesitated as she climbed out. Her dirty shoes touched the marble floor as if she were defiling something sacred. Catherine opened the door with an impassive expression, though her eyes betrayed her restlessness. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up," she said, as if she needed to hide any hint of emotion. Sophia stepped inside. The house was quiet, elegant, understated. Everything was spotlessly clean and meticulously arranged, a brutal contrast to the chaos of the streets. The businesswoman led her to the guest bathroom. Soft towels, fragrant soaps, a white cotton robe. "I'll leave you to it. If you need anything, I'll be right next door," Catherine said. Minutes later, Sophia emerged shyly in the robe, her hair still damp, her frail frame betraying years of malnutrition. Catherine approached with a set of clean clothes, a pair of leggings, a cotton t-shirt and thick socks. "These should work for now. Tomorrow we'll get you some new clothes." Sophia dressed in silence. Catherine prepared a tray with hot tea and buttery cookies. They sat opposite each other in the living room, separated by a coffee table and a world of differences. The fireplace crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. "Sophia, do you want to tell me your story?" The girl nibbled on a cookie slowly, then looked down. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My parents died when I was 8. A car crashed into us. I only remember the glass shattering and the blood on the front seat." Catherine felt a lump in her throat. She said nothing, just waited. "I stayed in the hospital for a while. Then they sent me to a woman's home. She said she'd take care of me." She paused and took a deep breath. "At first she was kind, but then she made me clean everything. I was alone all day. She beat me when I made mistakes. Sometimes there was no food. I slept on the laundry room floor." "Didn't anyone see that?" Catherine asked, outraged. Sophia shook her head. "One time, a social worker came. I tried to tell her, but the woman pretended everything was fine, said I was trouble, that I was lying. The social worker left and never came back." Catherine clenched her fists in her lap. Her face stayed calm, but inside she was seething. How many layers of the system had failed this child? "Then," Sophia continued, "her son, one day he tried to hurt me. I ran. I jumped out the kitchen window. I only had a backpack with an old shirt and a notebook. I've been on the streets ever since." A part of Catherine inside her cracked, a pain that wasn't hers, but pierced her all the same. "You were alone all that time?" "Not alone. There were other kids. We slept near the station. We looked out for each other, but it wasn't safe. Sometimes I stole food. Sometimes I went 2 days without eating. Nobody looks at us. They just cross the street or call the cops to chase us away." Catherine inhaled deeply. Her eyes were moist, but she held Sophia's gaze. "Why did you go into that restaurant today?" "I couldn't take it anymore. I smelled the food. I thought if there were any leftovers, someone might share. But everyone told me to go away, except you." Silence. Deep. Painful. Sophia bit her lower lip. "Why did you invite me to your table?" Catherine didn't answer right away. She stood, walked to the fireplace and stared at the flames for a few seconds. "Because, for the first time in years, I saw someone truly in front of me, and I couldn't pretend not to see you." She turned. Sophia stared at her with wide eyes, as if she couldn't comprehend. "I've spent my life building walls, Sophia. I worked hard, I succeeded, I made money. But I became an island. And you, with your courage to walk into a place where no one wanted you, you broke that wall down." Sophia said nothing, but a tear traced down her thin cheek. Catherine returned to the sofa and gently pulled the girl into her arms. Sophia curled up in that embrace, offering no resistance. It was the first real hug she'd felt in a long time. There, in the quiet of that grand room, two lonelinesses met. One cold and wealthy, the other small and hungry. But in that moment, they recognized each other and began to heal. The main entrance of the Bennett mansion lit up automatically as the car pulled into the covered garage. Catherine stepped out first. She walked around to the passenger door and held out her hand to Sophia, who, still wary, grasped it firmly. The night security guard frowned when he saw the girl. The receptionist, who monitored the cameras and managed the household's internal affairs, hurried over when she noticed what was happening. "Mrs. Catherine, this child." "She's staying here tonight," Catherine cut in, her tone low but unmistakably final. "But—" "No buts, Michelle. Prepare one of the guest rooms and call the kitchen. I want something hot and light on the table in 15 minutes. Michelle nodded, bewildered, and vanished down the corridor. Sophia watched everything with frightened eyes. The mansion was vast, modern, furnished in a minimalist style and sober tones. Everything was so clean, so perfectly arranged, she wanted to take off her dirty shoes right then. But Catherine, reading her thoughts, squeezed her hand gently and said, "In this house you don't have to fear existing." They climbed a white marble staircase to the second floor. The guest room smelled of fresh sheets and lavender. It was larger than any place Sophia had ever slept. A queen bed draped in a plush comforter, a built-in wardrobe, a desk with a brass lamp, and a window overlooking the illuminated garden. "Think you can sleep here?" Catherine asked. Sophia nodded silently. Minutes later, dinner arrived: vegetable soup, fresh bread, and natural juice. Sophia ate slowly this time, maybe out of embarrassment, maybe sensing that this place demanded a different pace. Catherine watched every bite, as if trying to understand the pain by observing her. When Sophia finished, Catherine tucked the comforter around her, fluffed her pillow, and switched off the overhead light, leaving only the lamp on. She slipped out of the room quietly, but didn't sleep. Hours later, in the early morning, Catherine got up. Barefoot, restless, she walked to the corridor. She gently opened the guest room door. Sophia lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling. "You're not sleeping?" Catherine asked softly. "I tried." Catherine sat on the edge of the bed. "Mind if I stay a bit?" Sophia nodded. A heavy silence settled between them, broken only by the distant tick of a clock. "When I was your age," Catherine began, "my father used to say a good child was a quiet child. And my mother, she was like ice. Never hugged me, never said she loved me. She only taught me to win, to conquer everything, to conquer everyone." Sophia turned to face her. I never had that. I never won anything." Catherine offered a sad smile. "Maybe that's why you've already won more than I ever did. You're alive. You survived on your own. I only survived because I had money." Sophia's eyes widened. For the first time, an adult didn't speak down to her. For the first time, someone shared her own pain, rather than just hearing about hers. "Why are you so good to me?" Sophia asked, voice trembling. Catherine took a moment before answering. She looked at her hands, then into the girl's tear-brimmed eyes. "Because I'm tired of being alone, and you remind me I still have a heart." Sophia wept silently. Catherine did too. Two different stories linked by the same emptiness, the absence of love. Catherine lay down beside the girl, atop the comforter. They stayed there in silence. Neither fell asleep right away. But in that shared moment of night, of vulnerability, a new spark ignited between them. It wasn't just protection that began there. It was something deeper. A bond, an unspoken promise made not with words, but with presence. For the first time, Catherine's mansion didn't feel cold. For the first time, the silence wasn't loneliness. It was home. The sun had barely risen when Catherine awoke with a strange foreboding. The house's silence, once comforting, now felt oppressive. She sat up, glanced at the clock, 6:12 a.m. Slipping on her robe, she padded barefoot down the marble corridor and gently opened the guest room door. Empty. The bed was untouched, the comforter neatly in place, no sign of Sophia. Her heart pounded. She swept into the bathroom, the walk-in closet. Nothing. On the pillow lay a folded piece of paper. With trembling hands, Catherine opened it. "You were far too good. I don't belong in this world. I won't cause trouble. Thank you for everything. Sophia." The note slipped from her fingers and fluttered to the floor. "No," she murmured, her voice barely audible. She bolted down the stairs, eyes scanning for the girl. She dashed into the garden, shouted her name across the yard, roused the household staff. No one had seen Sophia leave. No cameras captured her departure. It was as if she'd vanished in the night. Without thinking, Catherine burst out the front door in her silk pajamas and slippers, hair tousled. The guard tried to stop her, but she shot past him. "Open the gate, now!" She left the car behind and ran on foot through the upscale neighborhood, questioning passers-by, stopping at bakeries and newsstands. A little girl, 10 years old, brown hair, thin. "Have you seen her?" she pleaded, desperate. It felt as though the ground had dropped out from under her. Her face, always flawless and composed in meetings, was now pale, makeup smeared, distorted by fear. By 8 a.m., her assistant's frantic calls came through: investor meetings, a press conference about the new bank partnership, an unexpected drop in the stock price. Catherine shut off every call. Nothing else mattered. She summoned her driver and ordered him to take her to the city center. She got out at bus stops, entered subway stations, approached offices. Finally, she returned home and hired a team of private detectives. Within 3 hours, Sophia's photos were plastered across social media, printed on flyers, shared in humanitarian groups. Wanted, name, Sophia. Approximate age, 10. Last seen, upscale district of the capital. Contact, 24H. The mansion became an impromptu search headquarters. Computers whirred, screens split between security camera feeds, city maps scrawled with red pen. Catherine neither ate, nor slept, nor spoke to reporters. Rumors swirled. The powerful Catherine Bennett had disappeared from the financial world. Chaos ensued. Analysts debated her absence from the stock market. Headlines speculated on her mental state. She didn't know. The world she had built with such effort now seemed irrelevant. That same night, alone in her dark office, Catherine flipped through Sophia's sketchbook, the one the girl had left behind by mistake. Simple drawings of little houses, stick-figure dolls, and in one corner 2 figures holding hands beneath a yellow sun. Below it, in shaky letters, "Maybe I can have a home." Catherine collapsed there and then. She wept as she had never wept before. The unbeatable, cold, untouchable businesswoman was now just a woman lost, desperately trying to find a girl who, for one night, had given her more than any profitable deal ever could. A glimpse of love. And for the first time, she understood what it meant to follow her heart, even when everything around her said it made no sense. 5 days. 5 nights without sleep, without a proper meal, without a full breath. 5 days of roaming the streets, frantic phone calls, false leads, clues that led nowhere. Catherine Bennett, a woman used to solving everything with speed and precision, now lived at the mercy of hope and of guilt. Then, on the morning of the 6th day, A phone call changed everything. "Mrs. Catherine, we have a lead. A little girl was seen sleeping near Atocha station. She's in bad shape. A volunteer recognized her from the flyer." Catherine didn't wait for details. She grabbed her coat, jumped into the car, and told the driver to fly. Traffic seemed to mock her urgency. Red lights lasted an eternity, but her eyes stayed fixed on the window as if she could see Sophia waiting there. When she reached the station, the stench of urine, filth, and frying oil mixed with the frenetic pulse of commuters. She sprinted through the corridors, pushing past people, crying the name that had become her only prayer. "Sophia! Sophia!" A volunteer pointed. "There, behind that container." Catherine raced over. There she was. Sophia lay curled up, trembling. Her skin was pale, her lips purplish, her breathing rapid and shallow. Her eyes were closed, head bowed to her chest. A dirty blanket was draped over her shoulders, and an empty backpack lay at her side. "Sophia!" Catherine dropped to her knees and pulled the girl into her arms. "Sophia! It's me! I'm here!" The girl didn't respond. Her body was too hot, burning. Catherine could barely feel her pulse. Desperate, she shouted for help. An ambulance was called immediately. On the ride to the hospital, Catherine held Sophia's hand, struggling to hold back tears that now fell freely. "Please, please don't leave me now. You can't leave me now." At the hospital, Sophia was rushed into the emergency room. "Acute pneumonia," the doctors said. "Severe malnutrition. High fever. Critical condition." Catherine waited in the hallway, hands covering her face, as if trying not to fall apart. When they finally let her into the pediatric ICU, she sat beside the bed and took the girl's hand. Tubes, monitors, the constant beeping of machines. Hours turned into days. Catherine didn't leave. She refused interviews, ignored meetings, blocked calls from the board. She slept in a stiff chair, her face pressed against Sophia's mattress. The doctors said it was only a matter of time, one way or another. On the third night, while the city slept outside, Sophia twitched her fingers. Catherine could hardly believe it. The girl opened her eyes slowly, blinking with effort. "You," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You actually came." Catherine choked on her words. "Of course I came, my love." "I never stopped looking. Never stopped," Sophia cried, weakly but truly, and in a trembling voice she murmured, "I'm sorry. I thought I'd caused trouble, that I didn't belong in your world." Catherine cradled the girl's face so gently as if she were made of porcelain. "Never say that again. You belong to me, and I belong to you." Silence. Sophia's breathing was still heavy, but she looked at Catherine as if trying to understand the impossible. Catherine paused, gazed deep into those weary eyes, and then asked, "Do you want to be my daughter?" Sophia didn't answer with words. She just mustered the strength to sit up and threw herself into the woman's arms, weak, trembling, but whole in that gesture. They wept together, no promises, no contracts, just the truth of a love born in pain and blossomed in hope. That night, in a hospital room, there was no luxury, no power, no headlines, only two wounded souls who had chosen each other. And everything began again there. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, cameras, onlookers. It wasn't every day you saw one of the country's most powerful women in an adoption proceeding, and even less common to see her moved to tears. Yet there she stood, Catherine Bennett, hand in hand with a little girl whose straight hair framed a shy smile, waiting for the judge's ruling. Given the facts, the stability of the petitioner, and the expressed wishes of the minor, I hereby grant the legal adoption of the child, Sophia Foster, who shall henceforth be known officially as Sophia Bennett. The little girl turned to Catherine with tears in her eyes. The businesswoman, no longer hiding behind any social mask, knelt and hugged her tightly. No cameras, no flashes, no financial analysts in that moment. just two lives bound by a choice of love. News of the adoption spread across the nation. Catherine's gesture touched hearts. Business magazines set aside stock market scandals to tell Sophia's story. Interview requests, honors, television invitations, all were politely declined. What she sought now went deeper than fame. It was purpose. Thus, the Sophia Bennett Foundation was born, a non-profit headquartered downtown, dedicated to sheltering street children. Its facilities were well-equipped, staffed by multidisciplinary teams, and offered educational and psychological support programs. In less than 3 months, over 100 children had been registered and placed into social rehabilitation. Sophia stayed closely involved, now dressed in bright clothes, with new notebooks and a backpack embroidered with her name. She had returned to school. She sat in the front row, read eagerly, and took meticulous notes. At first, classmates and teachers watched her with curiosity. Soon, they were won over by her spontaneous kindness and her lively eyes. At home, their routine had transformed. The once cold, silent mansion now smelled of baking cake in the afternoons, echoed with laughter in the hallways, and was strewn with toys in the living room. Catherine insisted on driving her to school every morning, despite her packed meeting schedule. At night, they read together, sometimes adventure stories, other times they simply lay on the sofa watching children's movies. Certain rituals became sacred. Sunday morning pancakes, the bedtime hug, the letters they wrote to each other on birthdays. Small gestures that wove together a new home. Sophia blossomed, and Catherine was reborn. For the first time, the businesswoman learned to listen before speaking, to feel without immediately analyzing. She began to see numbers as tools, not ends in themselves. She invested a portion of her fortune into real bridges for other lives, and in doing so, she found herself. One night after a foundation event, Catherine slipped into Sophia's room and found her asleep with a fairy tale book open on her chest. A chocolate fingerprint marked the page. Catherine smiled, gently closed the book, and tucked the blanket around her daughter. She stood there for a few minutes, gazing at the peaceful face that once bore so much pain. She softly touched the little hand, now sleeping in safety. In that simple gesture, she understood something profound. She had not saved Sophia. Sophia had saved her. The first week at her new school had been calm. Sophia, now 12, already knew the route by heart, the class schedule, even some of her teachers' quirks. She had few friends but was respected for her kindness. The staff treated her warmly, and most classmates admired her connection to Catherine Bennett, the woman who'd made headlines when she adopted her. But that peace was fragile. It happened on a Wednesday morning. A group of older students dug up an old tabloid article with blurred photos of Sophia on the streets, alongside a cruel headline, "Street girl now lives like a princess. How long will the charade last?" Though widely denounced at the time, the story resurfaced in private school chat groups, bringing with it vicious comments. "Look, the ex-homeless girl wants to sit at our table now. Bet she learned math counting street coins. Watch your backpack. She might steal it." Sophia heard it all without reacting. At first, she pretended not to care. But the laughter in the halls, the whispers when she passed, the sideways glances slowly eroded her confidence. Friends drifted away. Teachers, uncomfortable, looked the other way. By Friday, she came home early with a headache. Catherine noticed her silence, her downcast eyes, the missing smiles. Did something happen at school? Sophia hesitated. Then, faced with her mother's calm, steady gaze, she broke down. "They found out about my past. Now I'm just that street girl again. They look at me like I don't belong." Catherine held her tightly. She didn't say, "It'll pass." She didn't say, "Just ignore them." She knew exclusion's pain was real, and that Sophia needed more than consolation. The next day, Catherine called a press conference in the Foundation's auditorium. But instead of discussing business or social programs, she looked directly into the camera and said, "Today, I'm not speaking as a businesswoman, I'm speaking as a mother." She told the full story, how she'd met Sophia, how the little girl entered her life, and piece by piece rebuilt what money couldn't buy. She spoke of the cold, the hunger, the girl's suffering, and of the silent love that transformed her own soul. Sophia wasn't rescued. She rescued me. She taught me compassion and courage. Anyone mocking her story doesn't understand the power of overcoming, and anyone judging her for her past is ignoring everything she's achieved today. The video went viral. On social media, thousands sent messages of support. Parents, teachers, artists, even public officials weighed in, an example of strength, a symbol of hope, the girl who triumphed. At school, the atmosphere changed. That Monday, the administration organized a surprise ceremony. In the courtyard, before all students and faculty, the coordinator called Sophia onto the stage. "Today, we honor someone who teaches us that a person's worth lies not in their origin, but in their journey." They presented her with a symbolic Strength and Empathy medal. Applause filled the air, sustained, heartfelt, and most importantly, genuine connections followed. Formerly distant classmates came to talk. One shyly confessed, "My mom was homeless as a child. I never had the courage to say so. You inspire me." Sophia smiled, not the tentative smile of someone seeking approval, but the full smile of someone who knows her own worth, built piece by piece with dignity and effort. That day, when she returned home, Catherine waited on the porch. Sophia ran into her mother's arms. "I thought my past would destroy me," she said. "Your past doesn't define you. It proves how strong you are, and nobody can erase you because of it." They held each other tightly. It wasn't the end of a battle, but the triumph of an inner territory, the right to exist without shame, without fear. 3 years had passed since that cold night when Sophia first stepped into the Villa Real restaurant. Now at 13, she walked confidently through the halls of the foundation bearing her name. Her face graced brochures, websites, and fundraising campaigns. She was the institution's ambassador, and more than that, the face of hope. The project had grown. Over 500 children had been sheltered. Many returned to school, others found adoptive families, and now several dreamed of careers that once seemed impossible. Sophia knew nearly every child by name. She understood their stories, their fears, their victories, and she was treated as a natural leader, not out of obligation, but out of respect. That evening, she and Catherine were attending a benefit dinner at a popular neighborhood restaurant partnered with the foundation. The space was cozy, hanging amber lights, soft music playing, and delicious aromas drifting through the dining area. Sophia, seated beside her mother, smiled serenely. She wore a simple light blue dress with a foundation pin at her chest. Catherine sat proudly beside her, quietly taking in how much her daughter had grown. So much had changed, yet the essential remained, that bright spark in Sophia's eyes. As speakers took the podium, Sophia's gaze drifted to the window, and then she saw her, a little girl, small, thin, hair tangled, wearing a grey hoodie several sizes too big. Her wide, haunted eyes scanned the restaurant through the glass. Hesitantly, she edged toward the door, watching the plates of food, craving the warmth inside. The diners chatted on, oblivious. But Sophia was not. She recognized that look, the hunger on the face, the fear in the rounded shoulders, and above all, the barely visible courage of someone approaching the impossible out of sheer necessity. Without a word, Sophia rose. She crossed the room with steady steps, opened the door, and approached the girl who recoiled, expecting to be chased away. "Hi," Sophia said, offering a gentle smile. "Are you hungry?" The girl nodded almost silently. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "Then come in, Jasmine. Tonight you're having dinner with me. She took the girl's dirty, cold hand and led her inside the restaurant. Heads turned. Some stared in shock. Others smiled in recognition. But the gesture spoke louder than any reaction. From their table, Catherine watched in silence, tears gathering in her eyes. It was like watching an old film replayed, only this time, Sophia was the heroine. Jasmine sat down next to Sophia, who ordered 2 plates of the same meal. They talked as they ate. The girl was wary, but soon began to relax. She smiled for the first time when offered a soda. She told them she'd been living on the street for 2 months, that her mother had disappeared, and that she ran from the police whenever she could. Catherine leaned forward and lightly touched her daughter's shoulder. She asked. Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with quiet resolve. Yes, I think we've found ourselves a new little sister. Catherine knelt before Jasmine and smiled warmly. Would you like to come home with us tonight? Jasmine looked first at Sophia, then at the elegant woman, who regarded her not with superiority but with genuine kindness. She nodded slowly. That night, the 3 of them left hand in hand beneath the softer-than-usual glow of the streetlights. There were no speeches, no cameras, just the beautiful silence of one chapter closing and another beginning. On the ride home, Sophia rested her head on Catherine's shoulder and whispered, "Now I understand everything, Mom. What you saw in me is what I needed to see in someone else." Catherine squeezed her hand, emotion brimming in her eyes. In that moment, as the car slipped away into the calm night streets, one certainty took root. The love that welcomes is the love that transforms. And sometimes, the simplest gestures, like inviting someone to dinner, are the ones that save the world. One heart at a time. I hope you enjoyed today's story. If you did, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought about the story. See you in the next video.